it comes to video, over the years, brands like Canon and Sony have been in the lead, but that's not the case anymore. Now it's time to take Nikon seriously when it comes to video, especially because of the Nikon Z9.
You gotta just press record.
Hey, what's up? It's Omar Tkoi with Think Media, and right out of the box, the Nikon Z9 shoots 10-bit 8K video, that's right, I said 8K, at up to 30 frames per second. However, they have released a firmware update since releasing this camera that has essentially increased the value of the camera itself. This firmware update now adds 8K footage up to 60 frames per second, and you can do that with NRAW or ProRes RAW and more. And if you don't know what NRAW is, it's Nikon's new file format, and it's significantly smaller than other RAW formats. And it's important to note that this is all internal. You can record to the card that's in the camera, which is kind of unheard of based off of other cameras. You typically would have to plug in an external monitor to access these other formats. Shooting in RAW will give you the ultimate flexibility when it comes to color grading, and it's also cool because when I shot in Nikon RAW, it also gave me a 1080p file that I can use to edit with as a proxy, so that I don't have to be, bogging down my computer system if it couldn't handle the RAW. But when I export, it can then connect it to the RAW, and then you would actually get the results that RAW would actually produce. Now, if you would like footage that is a lot slower than 60 frames per second, you can do 4K 120 frames per second with this camera, which is super nice if you want that 4x times slow motion. Now, maybe you're asking the question, where does 8K fit in regards to buying a camera that can shoot 8K? Well, if you maintain a 4K workflow with this camera, which I think a lot of people would, you're actually getting 8K downsampled image, which is awesome. So maybe you do want to just stick with 4K for now, but also because this camera can shoot 8K and that's the capabilities, you'll actually future-proof yourself from buying a camera like this, because when 8K becomes more normalized, then you have the ability and camera to do so, which is super nice to know. Another cool thing in regards to this camera is it being a full frame sensor, you can actually shoot in a crop mode, essentially allowing you to get a second focal length with whatever lens you put on this camera. Now, when it comes to colors, I kind of want to talk about it in 3 different levels. The first level of color is straight out of the camera. The Nikon colors out of this camera, I think, are so good. When it comes to skin tones, their interpretation of other colors, it just looks really good. And essentially what you're watching right now is the look straight out of the camera. I also shot some videos for the YouTube channel with this camera, and knowing that I didn't have that much time to color grade footage, I loved how it looks straight out of the camera, not needing a color grade. But the second level is if you do want to get into a little bit of color grading, you can change the color profile to flat, which is an easy grade picture control. And then you would have the third level, which would be color grading log footage that this camera can produce. When you choose your file format inside of the menu of this camera, you have the ability to go a little bit deeper and select your picture profiles. And you can select SDR, HLG, and N-Log. But speaking of that, it's really cool that they also have what is called View Assist. So when you are shooting in a log format, if you turn on View Assist, it's gonna give you a Rec 709, or more or less a complete image, so that you can, at your eyeball, see what you are shooting. And then secondly, you can enable zebras to make it easier to shoot and make sure that you're exposing correctly for your highlights and shadows. And if you remember when I mentioned earlier in the video about the firmware update, if you do update the firmware, which you should, you get access to waveforms, which make sure everything is exposed correctly when shooting, especially in N-Log. Now, just to remind you, everything that I mentioned in regards to resolution, file format, color profile, and things like that is all internal, essentially meaning that you don't need an external monitor to access these other features. So the fact that you can do this all internally on just a CF Express Type B card is incredible. Now, the Nikon Z9 has great stabilization built into the camera, and you have the ability to access it with 3 different modes. The first is off, the second is normal, and then you have sport mode. And what's so cool about adjusting these, because it's built into the camera, there is no crop that takes place like other cameras where you get the ability to adjust stabilization. Another cool thing about this camera, because there is built-in stabilization into the camera itself, it gets really powerful when you pair it with another lens that has stabilization built into the lens, and you get really smooth footage at that point. Another additional feature when it comes to stabilization is vibration reduction. And in this case, that is digital, so there is a slight crop when you turn that on. I personally think having sport mode on is plenty, but if you wanted to access more stabilization, just turn on vibration reduction and you'll be good to go. As far as audio goes, you have a 3.5mm audio jack and a headphone jack, so you can monitor your audio. But what's cool about the audio from this camera is it captures 24-bit linear audio, which is essentially just an audio file that has a lot of data there, so it can help a little bit with clipping or a little bit if your audio is too low. Now, when it comes to autofocus, you could truly make a separate video demonstrating all that this camera could do in regards to autofocus, but if I can just do it some justice, Nikon developed an algorithm that uses deep learning and enables the Z9 to automatically detect and track the world's largest range of subjects. Other current cameras on the market focus on people's eyes, maybe dogs' eyes, and birds' eyes, but the Nikon Z9 can focus on people, dogs, cats, birds, cars, motorcycles, bicycles, trains, and planes, and this is all accessible in stills and video without changing your settings. If you choose to focus on some sort of object with the Nikon Z9, it'll know what you've selected, and even when things get in front of the way or it doesn't quite see that thing, it won't lose focus, truly making it one of the most remarkable autofocus systems that I've personally seen in a camera. When it comes to low light performance on this camera, you can rest assured that it's gonna perform really well in low light, especially in higher ISO ranges. If you're shooting a wedding and you have some minimal light, this camera is gonna perform really well. And if you really do need to clean up your shot past a certain number, you can turn on noise reduction, which there's a few different levels of that. They have low, normal, and high. And some people would say that they typically just turn it on if they know they're gonna shoot past 3200 ISO, but you can use that at your discretion, but I haven't found too many issues in most low light scenarios that I've found myself in. Now, as far as the ergonomics goes for the Nikon Z9, if you put this camera in your hands, you're probably gonna be like, yo, this thing's a tank. Like, it has some good weight to it. It weighs about 3 pounds. It's a pro build. It's fully sealed and gasketed, so you don't have to worry about taking it into elements like rain and snow and things like that. As far as the screen goes in the back, it's a 4-axis tilt screen, which I've personally never seen before. But for somebody who is behind the camera, I appreciate the ability to tilt it in several different ways, especially if you're filming vertically. You can actually tilt it out in a way that'll make vertical filming a lot more easier. And when you access the firmware update, you can add the red frame around the screen so that when you are recording, you could see that red frame, and it's just a nice indicator to know that you are on and recording. The battery for the Z9 is spec'd to get about 170 minutes of filming. That is just under 3 hours of video, and that is in 8K with a full charge, which is good to know, and that is with no overheating. This camera will not fail you, and you can actually turn on the heat tolerance of this camera to just set it from off to high. The Nikon Z9 has a full-size HDMI, and so when it comes to external monitoring or recording, you can put out a clean feed up to 8K resolution if there's no card in the camera. But if you want to record simultaneous to another monitor, you can record up to 4K 60 on that external monitor and record whatever you want on the internal card. And what's cool about this is there's no blackout. Other cameras kind of just force you to see what's on the monitor itself or on the output and not necessarily see what you're recording on the camera itself. So it's cool that the Z9 will allow you to do both at the same time. When it comes to the lenses for the Z9, it takes Nikkor Z mount lenses, which they have a huge selection from, but you can totally adapt up to 300 Nikon lenses with the adapter, and that just opens up the playing field to get really any shot composition you're looking for. Personally, for this test unit that I was given, I was able to use the 24-70 as well as the 14-24, and the 24-70 is one of the best lenses you can get for any camera that you are using, as it is very versatile, with 24 being a good medium wide shot that you're able to get, and then 70 giving you that nice compressed shot. Right now in this talking head video, I'm at about 70 millimeters, and it's a great compressed image that you can get with that. But the 14-24 was also cool because this lens is super wide, and what's cool about this lens is it doesn't protrude when you zoom in and out, so it maintains the weight of the lens itself. And so if you wanted to put this camera on some sort of a stabilizer, you can get a super nice wide shot if you were doing like real estate stuff. But all that to say, you can also check out the many prime lenses that they offer for this camera to get super nice shallow images. So who is this camera for? I mean, at a $5,500 price point for just the body, this camera is definitely for the professional or the person that is actually being financially compensated for their creative work, right? If you're doing weddings, maybe commercials, small business promos, testimonials, this camera is definitely one to be excited about, but even more so to consider because of all its capabilities for those things. I have a friend that does legit commercial work, and when I told him the specs of this camera, he like wanted me to fly out immediately and help him on a job because he wanted to test it. Now, it's also important to note who this camera isn't for, and I would just say straight up, it's not for your YouTube beginner. You should be getting a camera that's around $800, which Nikon actually has. They have their Nikon Z30, which is a incredible camera for content creators and people that are making videos on themselves, filming themselves, as there's a flip out screen and things like that. I actually made a video on that camera, and if you want to check that out, you can click or tap the screen, and I can't wait to see you in a future video. Peace.